What was that? Oh, you don't have the hat on, bud.
No, I feel it. Yeah. All right. I think we are live.
We are live. Oh man, this is fantastic. What show is this?
Yeah, what are we doing?
What are we doing? This is episode 65.
The
65.
Big Finish 2.0.
2.0.
Yeah.
You might have seen it before.
Yeah, we did last year, right?
Yeah, we've done it the last couple years.
Couple of years.
But it's one of those really important things that can kind of make or break your custom rod build.
Yeah, let's be honest. Everyone at some point has probably had an issue or two here or there with rod finish. It's easily, not that you can mess it up easily, but it's one of those things, minor details make a big difference in how you mix and apply your epoxy. That's
a great point. And you know, of course, thread work plays a part in that. And of course, you know, applying decals and whatnot can all play a part in that. But it does kind of seem like the finish it's the last thing that goes on there. And, you know, you can really make or break it. So, all right, well, it is December 8th. It's the last show of the year, episode 65. It's the Big Finish 2.0. Of course, we got a wonderful moonlit night out here on the lake that you can see behind us.
Absolutely.
It's festive in here tonight.
It is.
It's quite festive. So
get the lights going, and
that's it.
Yeah.
And we have the big galvanized pole over in the corner for those that celebrate that holiday. We'll have the airing of grievances later on the show tonight. So let's go through real quick what we're going to talk about before we roll that intro.
Yeah, well, first we're going to do kind of an epoxy 101. The equipment that you need to, obviously you need your epoxy, some few essentials to have, and a few add-ons if you really want to make it that process even easier, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to get into, obviously, how to mix it, a few tips there, how to apply it. I know you got some great tips, especially for even the brushes, you know, a small tip to how to fix your brushes to make it easier to apply the finish.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, we're going to talk about if you happen to have an issue, especially after your epoxy is applied, how to fix that.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point because a lot of the times we can get ourselves into a bind. If you booger something up, it's all about how you come out on top.
Exactly.
So there are times, and like you said, we've all been there. We've got, whether you have a fly that might be buzzing around the shop, lands in the finish, or maybe you didn't trim that thread off, or you've got, you know, too long of a tag in or something, you got a little thorn hanging out there, or put a little too much finish on, you get what they call a football, or let's say, you know, God forbid something happens, your power goes out, and then now you got, you know, kind of sag marks or something. We'll show you how to get around that.
Cool. And of course we have giveaways too.
Oh yeah, we got some really nice giveaways. Of course, it is the first of the month, so Hunter's got the credit card paid down. I know we've got some questions coming in. We appreciate that. We saw some questions earlier in the day and from the last couple of days put in there in the Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop, because, you know, if you're not a member there, you're not a member of anything, really.
Missing out.
That's it. So, all right, I think that is about kind of the initial thing. I think everybody's ready to go. We've got the guys in the war room. Everything's coming up on the teleprompter there, and I think we're about ready to rock. Nick, you ready, bud? Jay, what do you think? Perfect. Let's hit this thing.
Let's do it.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission.
All right, there it is. Episode 65, the Big Finish Show. So we need to take care of a few things here real quick.
Yep.
Coming to a close, really.
Next week.
Next week is going to be the photo contest. So you got last chance to enter. Of course, those entries need to be in by December 15th and using the hashtag build2, the number 2, win for the themed photo contest. You got to build on an MHX or a CRB custom rod, and of course that is in the Mudhole Live Rod Builders Workshop. Top 3 entries are eligible to win gift cards. And again, got to be in by the 15th. So what, 7 more days? And then we'll put it to a vote. And the top 3 will walk away with big money.
Cool. So we got a couple days to get that entry in.
Yep. Finalize
And,
that stuff. You know, you probably, anything special going on that you've got for the holidays, you probably should be wrapping that up anyway. So throw a few glamour shots of it in there, and we'll get you entered in that contest. Use that hashtag build2win.
Yeah. And of course, we have to make a little announcement for some new products we have.
Always.
We have some new RBS kits. If you guys are familiar, we're going to pull the RBS Pro and the RBS tracks out in a little bit.
Yep.
But we have some newly revamped kits added on the website. They all begin with RBS-K. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all on the website. Those, like I said, newly revamped. We've added some new products into those that were not in the previous kits.
Yep.
And we're actually going to be giving one of those away. The RBS2.
That one's
the
pretty
K2.
spicy.
It is, yeah.
It's good.
So we'll be giving that away alongside the grand prize.
Perfect.
Cool. So,
And you know, the great part about those is they are fully expandable, upgradable units.
Yep.
You can they'll kind of grow with you, you know, and it depends on where you want to jump in. You know, depending on how much you need, what you want to spend, you can jump in at a 2. You can run all the way up to a 5 if you want to impress your buddies. And then from there, you've got the tracks, you've got, you know, a couple different options of wrappers, whether you want a 2-spool thread carriage, whether you want a 4. One of the kits has a dryer with clutch. One's got the wire chuck. I know you're a big fan of that. So they're, like you said, they're revamped, and you guys are going to need to check those out there at mudhole.com after the show because we put a lot of work into that.
yeah.
And I
And
think you guys
also,
will.
they're, sorry to cut you off, they're also available in the black track option now.
Right.
Which, you know, as before, they were only available in the silver, but we've added the black color option to all those kits now.
Yep. And all you got to do is just select the button.
Yep.
You want black or silver?
Yep.
In track-wise. So that's fantastic. Push poles.
Push poles.
The MHX push poles are back in stock. I think for those that grabbed one there on the, was it Cyber Monday? I think we had that. Yeah.
$75 off, I believe.
Yep. Now the cool thing about that is it's the same great push pole that we've had before. We made a couple little different tweaks to it. Now it is also in a 19, a 21, and a 23 footer. That just is an option because we've had people always asking, well, I only have, you know, a 16-foot GNU, or I've got a 21-foot this, or I got a 20-foot this. What do I need? You know, do I have to cut that one? What happens if I want a longer one? So we got it. We got 3 different lengths, and that is 100% carbon fiber push pole.
Yep. And we've upgraded the packaging a little bit.
Hey.
Much nicer box. Actually got one over
Yep.
here.
Pull one
I'm
up
gonna
there.
Grab real quick. I want to give me a hand there. So
Right.
you can- yeah, so this is a little bit nicer packaging.
There it is.
It's going to come to you just like this in this box.
Yep.
This is the 19-footer.
Yep.
So really nice display. Heavy duty corrugated box.
Yep.
Not going to be damaged in shipping.
And of course, that push pole ships for free.
Yep.
Every day of the week and on Sunday. So the cool part about that too is you get 2 ferrules, 3 sections of push pole. Depending on the length, it depends on how long those sections are. But for example, for a 21 footer, you're going to have 3 7-foot sections. You'll have 2 12-inch ferrules, and then you'll have a point and a fork. So it really doesn't matter what end, you put that in. You also have a stainless steel replaceable tip in there. Yep. I recommend adding just a little pro paste on that guy because sometimes that stainless tip can back out a little bit, if you're using it a ton. And in that box, when you buy that push pull, you get the things I mentioned as well as the epoxy. You get a little bit of sandpaper. You get some latex gloves. You get everything you need to put that pole together and get it on that skiff or bass boat or whatever you're going to use it on and go fish. So you don't have to worry about what else do I need to buy with this thing. You buy the push pole just as it is, choose your length, it gets shipped to you for free, and then assembly is quite easy.
Very easy. Yep.
Yep.
Cool, cool. All right. I think that takes care of our little housekeeping info.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to dive in here. Epoxy 101.
Yep. So let's start with the supplies we need to actually mix our epoxy,
Yes.
right? So for one, we got to have some type of epoxy, right?
Yep.
I've got here, this is the standard Pro Coat, which is our medium build epoxy. Of course, we have Threadmaster and Flex Coat and U40 products. We can go on and on.
Right.
First things first, though, you got to have an epoxy, and we'll kind of dive in that in a minute, right? We've got to have some brushes, whether you use the yellow or purple disposable brushes, right?
Yep, the yellows are a 1/4 inch, and the purples are an 1/8.
An 1/8, correct.
Yep.
You can also use, we have a little bit wider brushes where you can use for butt wraps or any, if you're doing a saltwater rod that has a long under wrap, great use for those.
Yep, these are the ox hair brushes. I like these if I'm using a hairbrush. And then the other ones we have that I didn't pull are red sable. So those are a really nice brush as well. And you can use the brush cleaner to clean these back out and continue to use them so you're not constantly creating waste in the shop and using them. But to be honest with you, I use that yellow, this guy right here, I use this a lot.
Yep.
It just makes it really, really easy and I'm comfortable with it. And I think some of the things you will find with this epoxy situation is you might do it a little different. I might do it a little different. Everybody out there might have their own way. You kind of need to develop, you need to be a little bit of a creature of habit with the epoxy. That's how you're going to get it really dialed in.
Absolutely. You're right. Yep. We need some mixing cups, whether we use the 1 ounce, the 2.5. I think we even have a 5 or a 5.5 ounce cup, right?
And then, of course, we have non-disposable options.
Stainless steel version.
These are really nice.
You can reuse those.
There's 2, 3 sizes of these?
I think 3 sizes.
I think 3 sizes of these.
One, I think they're along the same sizes, like 1, 2, 2.5.
And a 4 maybe?
And a 4 or
Something
5,
like
yeah, something like that. Some mixing sticks. Again, these are disposable. Use them one time when you mix it in the cup, and they're done. The foil dishes.
Yeah, so those are requires. These are some extra little add-ons.
These are extras, yes. The foil dishes are great. After you've mixed your epoxy in the cup, you can put this in the foil, put the epoxy in the foil dish, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But these are great. It actually serves a couple different uses in there.
Yep, and there's, you said 2 sizes?
2 sizes of those.
Okay.
We have the 3 and the 4 inch.
Gotcha.
Cool. Syringes. These are very useful. We'll get into this a little bit later, but we typically measure epoxy by volume, correct? Not by weight.
Yeah, and we understand that some guys and girls, rod builders out there, are mixing this by weight and having success.
Okay.
We recommend doing it by volume. It was designed to be done by volume. But again, if you're having success with it, doing it by weight, okay, great. I'm not going to say you're doing it wrong by any stretch, because if you're being successful, you're being successful. But this stuff needs to be measured in a syringe, or you can use a graduated measuring cup. It needs to be done by volume, and it needs to be exactly 50-50. If you're having an instance where your epoxy is not drying or it's not getting hard enough or whatever, it's not because you didn't add enough hardener and don't add more hardener.
Yeah.
That's not going to fix it. You need to either be mixing it better which we're going to show you how to do that, you either need to be measuring it better or it needs to be at the right temperature. And we have one of these little handy perfect finish thermometer. If I can get it off the table here. My goodness, you guys are playing a joke on me or something.
There you go.
So the perfect finish thermometer, you'll see here, there's a little kind of a gauge there. It is, freezing cold here in Florida and up in the penthouse, but we're still in the just right range here at 70 in the room. So 70 to 80 is where we like to keep it. 72, 75 is usually where I like to hang on to. Down here, you're going to have issues with it curing properly or taking too long to cure. And above, to be honest, I would rather it be above than below.
Absolutely.
You really don't want to be doing it at 90 degrees, but
Yeah.
it's just going to shorten that working time. It's better than below, though.
Another really handy tool, supply to have
Sure, both.
is the BCSI.
Yeah.
These little self-sealing caps, and I'll show you guys actually what these look like in the bottle here in a second. These are very, very handy to have, very inexpensive, and they'll save you a lot of time, especially when you're trying to take the epoxy out of the bottle with a syringe.
Yep, absolutely. And that self-sealing cap can live in the bottle.
Yep.
You don't have to put the cap back on, nothing like that. And it really, really helps because it just allows you better, fit for that syringe, and then you're ready to rock forever. And we did add those to a lot of our, if not all, supply kits.
Absolutely.
So they're a very inexpensive item, but they're worth their weight in gold to me.
Yep. And to round it out, we have our alcohol burner, or torch, as we refer to it sometimes. Great tool to have, especially after you've applied the epoxy. Or you can get a heat gun.
Or this guy.
Which is one of the questions I saw up there from Sandra in the Facebook group. Does a heat gun work just as well as a torch?
Yep.
And the answer is yes, it does.
Honestly, a hair dryer even.
Sure.
Works pretty good. But again, it's going to be one of those start on the low setting, go easy at first. Because I might even show you what happens when you hold a flame on it too long tonight.
Yeah.
Why not?
Cool.
I like tearing stuff up.
We also have our CRB heater, just in case your temperature does happen to fall below that 70-degree mark. We can break out our heater, warm up the area around our tool bench and even the room itself.
Now I'll get this guy.
Yep.
And then of course,
let's just go ahead and show the tent, which is
this is half.
half the tent.
So the cool thing about this is it will keep bugs and cat hair and little kids away from a drying rod. The other cool thing is this tent, maybe turn it just a little bit here. I want to show them like this. So that tent is pretty big inside. It will fit the 3-rod dryer. So the tri-dryer will fit inside of that. So it's a really cool tool.
And then you can obviously use the heater inside of the tent. That's where it really shines.
Yeah, and that just plugs in. And of course that tent, if you need to ship it, it doesn't get shipped like that. It's in a bag. You want to grab that bag real quick. So it's got very easy little directions. If you do feel it necessary that you need to disassemble the tent, it's quick and easy, really. There's some directions in it. You can put it back in the bag like that. Or, we honestly use it a lot here in the shop, so we just leave it out.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Cool. And a couple of the last things we have here, our epoxy mixer, which isn't essential to have, but it makes the process so much easier.
Yep.
You can draw out the epoxy into your syringes, put the epoxy into the cup, take your cup, put it in the epoxy mixer, and you can walk away for 5-10 minutes while it mixes, does its thing, and you're good to go. You can come back. You can take that time to make sure your guides are lined up, make sure there's no fuzz or pet hair in your guide wraps, whatever it may be.
Cool.
Last but not least, gotta have a rod dryer.
Yep.
That is an essential. Unless you have maybe a power wrapper that has the dryer on it. Otherwise, you have to have a rod dryer to keep that rod turning while your epoxy dries.
Got a couple options. We got the triple dryer here. That's the wire chuck.
Yep.
This is the standard, the one that started them all. That's the regular RDS, the regular rod drying system. You can see these are all very well used here in the penthouse and behind the rod building bench. We use them a lot in here. And then, of course, on that rod dryer, you can also get one with a clutch. So yeah, there's a lot of different options out there. So
Absolutely. So that's a quick overview of some of the necessities and a few of the extras that make the process a little bit easier.
absolutely. The last two things that we do not sell, but you need to keep on hand, is either just some isopropyl alcohol. This is 99. It's just what we've got. You can use 70. You can use, is it 91?
91.
70, 91, 99, whatever. This is also denatured alcohol. This you can get at an Ace Hardware, a Walmart, a Home Depot, a Lowe's, whatever. And you also see here it says clean burning fuel. This goes in your alcohol burner. Do not put ISO in your burner.
Nope.
It just doesn't do it. Don't put Bacardi 151 in there, any kind of bourbons, diesel fuel, any of that stuff. Just use denatured alcohol, And a lot of people that have been using finish and thinning it. You can also thin finish with this. Sometimes you will see this written as DNA, denatured alcohol. So if any of the OGs, the guys that have been building longer than I've been alive, if you ever see that, they use, let's say, Flex Coat and they add DNA, that's what they're doing.
Yep.
So they're thinning it out a little bit. So you can use it for that. And then, of course, you can use it in here. Another thing, I know a lot of the guys, JL especially, he uses one of the little torches. He's probably one of the premier rod builders that I know. And a lot of guys use the little torch as well. So there's a lot of options, but you need to have heat at hand somewhere. Whether you want a hair dryer, heat gun, alcohol burner, little torch, something like that. Do not just use a Bic lighter.
No.
You can actually take a Bic lighter, and I'm going to try to show it tonight. But you can actually take, and you see the smoke coming out of that lighter. That smoke will actually be absorbed into that finish.
It can ruin a guide wrap in a hurry.
Yeah. You get any of that there, Nick? So there's smoke coming off of that. So don't do that.
Nope.
Anyway.
Stay away.
Cool. You want to take care of a few questions? Let's give something away. And then, I'm going to show, I've got a little thing on Color Fast regular nylon.
Yeah. Let's talk about the different types of epoxy.
Okay.
Real quick, and then we'll do the
We'll run
Color
through
Fast.
that. Perfect.
So just real quick, I mentioned our standard Pro Coat earlier, which is a medium build epoxy. There's also light build, and there's also medium build, which pretty much all manufacturers across the board have.
Right.
Of course, we have our Threadmaster there. I see.
Threadmaster Light, and then we have
High build. Perfect.
Threadmaster High Build.
So the light build, I know you use light build for pretty much
my personal
all
favorite.
applications, right?
My personal favorite.
So the light build is great. Freshwater fly rods, ultralights, inshore rods.
Yep. Or if you just want to deal with like 3 and 4 coats on a saltwater rod.
Still can use it.
Still can
Absolutely.
use
Right. Your high build is going to come in handy when you're doing offshore rods, long butt wraps, anything that's going to need a little bit extra epoxy.
Yep.
Say you're doing floating decals. Be a great application. Instead of doing 2 or 3 or 4 multiple coats of light build, you can just come in with maybe 1 or 2 high build.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you need a little extra coverage, like thickness-wise, diameter-wise, the high build is the deal. It's not necessarily that it, has a stronger, bond or anything like that. It's just a thicker viscosity. It's got a little extra durability just because there's more of it there.
Yeah.
That's really it. So you can translate that into better coverage over, using if you're going to put an under wrap on a saltwater rod, then if you're not going to coat that first, and then you put your guide with your wraps, let's say you double wrap the top, you got a lot of thread to cover there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times the guys will come in and instead of just, you know, if I was to add one coat of light build Threadmaster or something like that, it would just all get drawn into the thread and you'd be like, where'd all the finish go?
Yeah.
Whereas the high build is going to help you not only absorb into the thread, but because it can handle that, it's a thicker finish, it will cover more.
Yeah.
So that's just
The other noticeable difference you're gonna have between light and high build is your working time,
yes.
also called your pot life. A lot of people call it pot life,
Mm-hmm.
and your drying time. So with a light build, you're gonna have a little bit longer working time or pot life.
Yep.
You're gonna have a little bit longer drying time.
Yep.
And then the opposite for high build, you're gonna have a shorter working time, but it is gonna cure a lot faster.
Absolutely.
Yep. And of course, your medium build, our standard Pro Coat, is a good mix of right in between.
Yeah, it just falls in between. You know, if you are someone that does use a multitude of finishes, you will notice that the Pro Coat does kind of have, it falls kind of in between the light. Now, there are a couple one coats, and they're unique. So where did I have this? So there's a Threadmaster 1. This is a premium one-part rod finish. This is unique because there's no mixing. This is something that, you know, don't shake this bottle, don't stir this bottle, don't mix it up, don't anything like that. You can actually take it, pour some out, put the cap back on, and it's going to just dry in the air. It's not a chemical reaction type thing. So that is one type of one part. Now, the next type has a few warnings attached to it.
Yep.
So this is U40 permagloss. Now, this stuff is pretty cool, but you know, you kind of have to heed a little bit of caution, I guess you would say. This is not something that, if you're in a really tight, confined space, that you need to work with because the vapors are pretty solid.
Yep.
This is flammable as well. Now, where this stuff shines is, I would say, I mean, this is something, it's a urethane rod finish, okay, first of all. And I would venture to say that it's probably the best option for a non-yellowing finish. So this is something that is going to provide the clearest non-yellowing finish. All epoxies are going to yellow. This is pretty much not going to yellow. A lot of the bamboo builders use this. Now, this is water thin.
Yes.
And I'll pour a little of this out in a little bit, and I'll show you guys what it's like to put this on. But it is literally like water. So you're going to have to use a number of coats. Whereas you might use like 2 coats of Threadmaster Light, you might have to use like 5 or 6 coats of this. But this is a humidity cure style urethane. And when you look at the directions on the back, it's going to say there's no mixing required. Do not open until ready to use because, again, it'll cure as soon as it won't cure as soon as the air hits it, but that's what makes it cure. Now, the great thing about this is air dry 1 hour in between coats. So we're all used to Pro Coat and some of these being 7, 8 hours to be like dry so you can put another coat, and then, you know, we usually let it go 24 hours to cure. This, though, you can just go 1 hour. And then it's 24 hours cured out at 50% relative humidity, which in Florida, it's never been probably 50% humidity in my lifetime. But, you know, it's just one of those where this stuff is very, very unique, but you do have to pay attention when using it because it is flammable. It will get you high as a kite, so just be careful. Do not do this, you know, in an enclosed space. Thankfully, this room is actually really big. It's got really tall ceilings. We could do a little bit in here. So yeah, this stuff is unique though. It's really good. You know, you could do a quick repair. And of course, like I said, bamboo or fly rods, because you could really dial back how much finish you put on those thread wraps to minimize weight and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And it's very durable too.
Super.
It does take multiple coats, like you said,
Yeah.
but once that gets built up, it's a strong,
it's
strong
solid.
product.
Yeah. And of course, you know, when you are doing something like a white blank, you know, we have a lot of white blank options, or very light color. That's going to be something, you know, if you want to use a very light color thread or something like that, a silk even, a very light color, that's going to back out, you know, the yellowing aspect of it that you typically get with epoxies. So, yep, that is that.
All right, let's talk a little, color fast and nylon?
Yes, because all epoxies, all of these finishes are going to react a little bit different. Jay, if you could go back to the other screen, bud. So we've got a couple things that we've done on this rod here. In particular, these two here. So these are the same blue, but you're going to find that this is going to be here. It's going to be your regular nylon, and your color fast is going to be over here on this side. So that is something to keep in mind, because even in the camera, the one on this side here is going to be your regular nylon. This is a satin black Elite Pro Series. It's one of the NEPS's. So you can see that this blue and regular nylon in the camera is barely noticeably blue. It's almost like purpley looking, because it will darken, whereas this blue stays nice and true. So that's something to kind of be aware of there when you put finish on. So you can always take, and Hunter, if you want to hold that one for me. Sure. If you get into a bind and you do not know whether this red is color fast or nylon, you can always come in, before you put finish on it, you can always come in with some alcohol, and you can actually wet the thread. And if it stays the same color like that and it doesn't darken out, you know you've got color fast thread. So if you do happen to lose a label or something, you'll get to a point where you can tell though, because a nylon thread is very, it kind of has like a sheen to it, sort of.
It does.
You know, so, but that's just a trick with your alcohol, that either if you want to do a test wrap and see what a regular nylon does over a different color blank, you know, if you're putting a light color over a very dark blank, it'll give you what it looks like. Or if you are like, oh no, I don't know if I had regular nylon or color fast.
Yep.
Without putting finish on it, that's how you can tell. So that's it.
Cool. Well, let's do a few questions.
Yeah.
Lee from Facebook, would you use epoxy that has a little, that is a little older and turning darker in color? So Lee, all epoxies over time are going to turn yellow, especially the hardener portion, which is usually part B, I believe.
Yeah.
Well,
it depends, because this on Threadmaster is part B, but I don't know if it's every manufacturer is B.
Part B hardener.
Yeah, this is
it
part
could
B.
be. Okay,
Pro Coat and
could be
Threadmaster.
different, but probably
Sure.
most of the time they're going to be part Bs. Regardless, most manufacturers recommend a 1-year shelf life.
Yeah.
If it's over a year, I would toss it and just buy a new batch. Yeah. Buy some new bottles of epoxy. Honestly, it could probably mix up fine, and there's going to be no issue at all. Most of the time when you actually mix your hardener, even if it is a little bit yellow, you mix that with your resin, which is typically stays clear, that epoxy is going to come out perfectly clear, no problems whatsoever.
Yep.
But I would just toss it, get some new stuff.
Sure. Especially if it's been a year, or do a little test sample.
You can.
You know,
Yep. Test it out.
If you're in a bind and you forgot to order some, or that's all you've got, do a little test sample and mix it up. And you can like leave it in the clear cup.
Yep.
And then have a look at it in the light and go, ooh, that's going to be just fine. So I'll continue.
Yep.
So, yep. Let's see. Bum, 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 bum.
Ron's got a similar question there. How long does Pro Coat keep for?
Yeah.
Again, 1 year shelf life. You can certainly use it past that 1 year point. Would definitely highly recommend doing a test batch just to be sure.
Yeah.
But 1 year is the approximate limit.
Absolutely. Let's see. Ralph, what temperature setting do you suggest for the epoxy bottle warmer? I always run pretty much everything on the lowest possible setting. In reality, your finish doesn't need to be 200 degrees to mix it. It really just needs to be, 80, 90 degrees if you're warming it up, really. It really can just be 70 degrees. But if you're in a situation where it's been in a cold basement and sometimes maybe it even has crystallized a little, warming it separately, so don't mix it and then warm it.
Yeah.
So you put water in the epoxy bottle warmer, then you just take these two bottles like this, put them in there, let them get warm, and then you can go, okay, yeah, they feel warm, You don't have to turn that dial all the way up. And then you mix them together, stir them up, and you're ready to rock. But really, that's going to be something that, if it is really cold in the man cave or in the she shed or wherever you're doing your rod building. So, but no, it doesn't have to be like 150 degrees. So don't worry about that. I typically run stuff on low. So
let's do one more, and then we'll do a
Yeah.
giveaway. What do you think?
Perfect.
Cody from YouTube. What is the best way to prevent bubbles in all caps? So Cody, we're going to hit on a few things here in a minute, and it really comes down to the first couple steps when you're mixing the epoxy. Highly recommend one of these foil dishes, or even just a piece of aluminum foil, whatever you got.
Yep.
These are great because you can obviously, they have the raised sides, and you can, move them around the bench easily.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more details in a minute. We'll get to that. But
Yep.
these little dishes will help probably more than anything else. Besides maybe that helps a lot too. The alcohol
Yeah,
burn.
little alcohol burner.
Yeah.
Real quick, let me hit Shark Teeth here from YouTube. What's the minimal amount of epoxy to use in the mixer? I keep getting bubbles in mine at 2 cc's. Shark, honestly, 2 cc's is like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I mean, if I am really splitting hairs and I know that I'm not going to need that much finish, it's really hard to mix anything less than 2 and 2. I mean, we have messed around in here with the different levels of it, and I don't even think drawing 1 cc of each out would even cover the bottom of the cup. So, and that's where you're going to get bubbles from, is as you stir this, you're technically going, if we have any cooks out there, any chefs, you're going to be folding air into this as you stir. So it's like, well, that really just defeats the purpose of the whole deal. I try to keep it around 3 cc's. If you really need to use less than 3, and you're just going to cover a decal or do something really, really short or do a repair, I would just leave the epoxy mixer out of the equation. If you really have to mix 2 cc's of each, mix 2 in there, turn the cup on its edge like this to puddle all the epoxy down, and then just really, really slowly stir that, because as that epoxy mixer turns, you kind of have this, you got this little hammer in here, and it's going to tumble. And when it tumbles, if it's not completely coated in epoxy and there's not enough epoxy in this, that's how you're going to work bubbles in there, because it's going to fold air into it, and then it's going to create a mess. It's nothing that you can't battle with the foil dish or some heat or something like that. But now at that point, you're just adding one extra step that you don't need.
Yep.
So, all right, Hunter, man,
All
get
right.
that credit card out.
First giveaway, we have a CRB finishing kit, which is going to have some great supplies in there, as well as our epoxy mixer.
Yep.
Cool. So let's see who the winner is.
Let's scroll it up to the top there.
Perfect. Dave Klein.
Yeah.
Cline from Facebook.
You got an easy one there.
Dave Klein. Congratulations.
They're cutting you some slack since it's the last one of the year.
We'll see. We'll see. We still got 2 more to go. So. All right. Demo number
Cool.
We're going to do kind of a start to finish
Yep.
on the proper finishing techniques,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to start with, I'm not going to use those bottles. I'm
Yeah.
actually going to go right over
I
here.
was gonna say, use those. Get those BCIs going.
So, if you guys have used Pro Coat before, obviously they come with these Yorker caps. First thing we're going to do is get rid of those.
Now, while you're doing that, if you notice, this is how that Pro Coat comes. So this is PK2 is the part number. It comes in a little baggie. It's got directions in it, tells you about it, and it's got the syringes in it already, color coded for ease. So that's what you get. That's what Hunter's working with right now.
Yep. Thank you, sir. So, back to our BCSIs. I know these are a little hard to show on the camera, but these are self-sealing caps. We've talked about these so many times on the show. They're such a easy little gadget to have, but they're often overlooked.
Yep.
So these are sold individually, not as pairs, so keep that in mind.
Yep.
Once you get your Pro Coat bottles, now I've already popped one cap. If we get a close-up on that real quick. I've already popped one of these caps in here so you can see how it actually looks, right? So I'm going to do the other one now. So all I'm going to do is take the cap, and as easy as this, it just pops right in there. You can turn this upside down, nothing coming out of that bottle.
Yep.
Cool?
And of course, Hunter is working with the PK2, which is 1 ounce bottles on either side, right?
Yep.
So you're going to order the BCSI 20s.
20.
So there's 2 sizes. You're going to see BCSI 20 and then BCSI 24. So the 20s are for that size bottle, a little bottle like that, the 1 ouncers. Any bottle over that, from this size to this, any bottle bigger than the PK2 option with the 1 ounce bottles is going to use the size 24.
Cool.
So, yep.
So once we have our BCSIs into our bottles, which again, you mentioned earlier, you can keep them just like this.
Mine live just like that.
These are sealed. You can even, sometimes they'll stay in there. Yep, just like that. That's how I keep mine.
Perfect.
Perfect right there.
Yep.
You can take the syringes out if you want to, whatever you want to do.
Just don't mix them up.
Just don't, yeah. Sometimes they will pop out. They don't want to stay in all the time, but regardless. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to turn this bottle upside down. I'm going to draw out 3 cc's. So we're going to do the full syringe of our blue side. Oh, wrong cup. Let's not do that, right?
Gosh.
I'm already messing up here. Mixing cup. Already had one. So
It's live.
we're going to put our epoxy in there. That's our part A, our resin side. Stay. Thank you.
No.
All right. Our part B. Put that in there. So now we have our part A and part B, 3 cc's of each, which, like you mentioned earlier, whether we're doing 1 decal or an entire rod, I'm mixing 3 cc's of each.
Yeah.
No matter what, if not more sometimes.
Sure.
So now that we have it in our mixing cup, one thing you do not want to do right off the bat is go in here and just start really whipping up this epoxy.
No?
Don't do that. That's going to create more air bubbles, and that's just not something you want to do. We already have a few in here from our syringes. So what I'm going to do is, all I'm doing is slowly mixing this, rotating every once in a while. And like Chris said earlier, you're almost folding this epoxy together. You do not want to whip it. You do not want to cause any extra bubbles in this process. And this is, if you don't have an epoxy mixer, which of course I do here, but I want to show you guys how to mix this manually. I'm rotating the cup, and I know this might sound silly, but this is one step where the most bubbles can be introduced during this mixing process. And the best thing you can do is take your phone and set a timer for about 3 to 4, maybe even 5 minutes.
It's a lot longer than you think.
It is. Because you can get to 1 or 2 minutes and you're thinking, oh, wow, it feels like it's been 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, you're halfway there.
Yep. I think we've all been there. I think we've
Yeah.
all been like, whoo, man, that had to have been 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like 90 seconds.
So for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to sit here and do this for 5 minutes. We're just going to call it good there. But again, you do not want to do this really aggressively. You want to be gentle, easy, fold, rotate your cup.
Scrape them sides.
Scrape the sides, make sure all that epoxy is mixed up really, really well.
Now the good news too is you can actually, and if anyone has taken the mud hole rod building class, which we just had one this past weekend here at the building. It was a big hit as always. Kudos to the whole gang there that does all that. I think, what do we have? Todd and Buzz and Kurt was here.
Kurt was here.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So what they do a lot of the time is they will actually draw out the finish, and they will just mix it into the cup, but they won't actually stir it and mix it. So I did that there, and that you can actually just
Leave it.
leave.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're ready, you can either take it and throw it in the epoxy mixer and let it go, depending on how much of a rod you're doing. Because sometimes, you might not want to mix 9 cc's of finish.
Right.
If you're doing a big long butt wrap or you're doing a bunch of under wraps or something like that, because you might not know how far that's going to quite get you. So you might want to be like, well, I'm going to mix one, but then I'm going to have one on standby so that I don't have to wait too long.
Exactly.
And then as you go, you can throw one in the epoxy mixer, but it can sit just like this without mixing, and it's not going to cure up on you. As long as you don't get to turning, you'll be fine.
Yep. So after we have mixed for 3, 4, 5 minutes, we're going to use our foil dish.
Mm-hmm.
And now the reason why this dish is so effective is, I'm going to drop my epoxy in there, is not only does it actually give you a little bit longer working time because it's going to spread this epoxy out over a bigger or a larger surface, it's also going to get rid of a lot of those little pesky bubbles.
Yep.
Because again, you're creating more surface area. Most of those bubbles are going to be popped in the process.
Yep.
And all I'm doing is getting a little bit of that remaining out of there. And I'm not going to throw away my cup.
Oh, that's a good
I'm gonna
tip.
save that. Of course, you can save this one as well. The reasoning for that is I'm going to save one or the other.
Yep.
Is to keep on my workbench, and when I come back, whether it be later this afternoon or tomorrow, whenever I go to check my rod on the dryer,
Yeah.
first thing I'm going to do is check this cup of epoxy, make sure it's set up, make sure it's not tacky. Use this as your experiment before actually testing or putting your fingerprint on your thread wrap.
So yeah, that's going to help get the bubbles out. Sometimes more bubbles is nice, but not in your finish. Nobody needs more bubbles in their finish.
So, and it's kind of hard to get it on camera because it's obviously wanting to move all over the place, but you can tell, yeah, it's not bad. Especially if I move it around a little bit, I can actually see most of those bubbles working themselves out.
Yeah,
And
because when you have it, if you were to mix all this epoxy in this cup, all of the epoxy in that chemical reaction is going to create heat, which is going to cure it.
Yep.
So, if you've ever mixed a big batch of epoxy before and realized, oh my God, it's starting to smoke, that's because your chemical reaction is happening at an accelerated rate and it's curing faster. So with that aluminum foil, it spreads it out and it creates a really, really thin layer so it doesn't have the ability to cook itself and to cure too quickly.
Yep. Longer working time will get rid of most of all your bubbles.
Yep.
Of course, you can come in after you've applied the epoxy. You can use your alcohol torch to get rid of a few remaining ones if there are. But this foil dish will get rid of most of that.
Absolutely. And before you mix it and before you put it in there, if you use, the epoxy bottle warmer or you put it, in hot water or something like that. It will help the bubbles as well. What you really don't want to do is you don't want to put finish in the dish and then cook it over a flame or take a heat gun and really get on it, because now what you're doing is you're adding heat to a chemical reaction that's happening, and you will actually shorten the pot life and the working time because you're speeding up that chemical reaction. So if you ever want to warm your epoxy, do it when it's separated and then bring it together. Don't take it and then flash it with heat while it's in there. You can come in and, heat it up a little bit when it's on the rod after. That'll help draw bubbles out and move it around a little. Now, you can, if you're at that last guide and you're like, oh man, this epoxy is really getting kind of, it's getting a little thick, you can actually take it, put it over a flame or hit it with a heat gun, and it'll make it thin for a really short period of time, but it'll be just long enough so you can take it and get it on that guide wrap, get it situated, and then you can see it'll start to work back to where it was before. But sometimes you can kind of rescue one last guide wrap with epoxy in your dish by just a little over that heat and thin it out really quick. So it doesn't last long, but it lasts just long enough to get that last guide fixed.
So that's kind of your start to finish. Of course, from this point, you can start applying it to your rod. And again, keep this or your mixing cup. Save this for when you go back to check on your rod later to be sure that epoxy is cured properly. Great tip right there.
I'll look and see. I think I got a blank over here.
I had a question real quick while Chris is looking over there. Kevin from YouTube, have you guys ever used a spatula for applying epoxy? Kevin, personally, I have not used a spatula, but I can say it's probably a great idea if you're doing, I'd say, a butt wrap. Any long surface, a butt wrap, an under wrap, a long decal or a rod skin, anything like that, I'm sure a spatula would come in very handy.
Yeah, I've seen, and we do have like a spatula kit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that some of the, I've seen some rod builders do that before. They were actually really cool at the way they do it. I am like you, I've never done it. But that's just because I've become a creature of habit with other stuff. So.
Which is probably a very overlooked tip as well, is once you settle into epoxy, especially a brand or a type of epoxy that you like and you're comfortable with, I wouldn't change, honestly.
Yeah.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
For sure.
Stand by that for sure. So.
No doubt. All right, so moving on to the next step, we're going to put some finish on here, and I'll take care of that. I've got a few little bit of thread work on this. We've used this before. Slide this over, and I'll monkey with one of these here. You want to turn that on?
Yeah.
Okay, so you notice, okay, so this is an 18, right? See a little look on the back?
It is an 18.
Okay, so you can tell that it is an 18 if you work with these long enough and you realize, okay, this is spinning a little bit quicker because there is a 9 and then there is an 18. We get the question a lot, do you use the 9, do you use the 18, which one do you use? The faster that this thing is turning, the less of a chance you will have to show any kind of hand shaking or anything like that. You can actually cut a little bit cleaner lines with a quicker moving machine. So you were saying that the one power wrapper, or the RBS Pro we have in the past, have put a rod in there and spun it pretty quick. And then we put finish on it, whether you want to use it with the belt and the pedal under power, or sometimes we will spin it by hand, put finish on like a under wrap or a decorative thread wrap. Then you take that off and you put it in like a tri-dryer or the big the 4-gang wall hanger type thing.
Yep.
So that will help you work through some of this more quickly, but if you just have your rod dryer at the house, a 9 or an 18, I would learn how to do it on both. You'll really find which one is more comfortable I still don't know. We'd have to look at numbers like what most people buy. Did the FSB2, did that typically come with a 9?
I think it's 9.
I think it's typically a 9. So anyway, we've got it spinning. If you notice, it's spinning away from me. I don't like it spinning away from me. The trick to this is, now this is the standard RDS. This does not have a clutch on it, so I can actually grab the chuck here and I can reverse it. And all I'm doing is grabbing it, and you can feel the motor. When the motor comes under torque of being stopped, it will reverse itself. So what happens is, if I just grab and touch this chuck here, then what it will do is it will reverse itself. And it's just that simple. So there it is spinning, and all I have to do is grab it, and there it does. And it's now reversing itself. It's as easy as that. Now, if you have the dryer with a clutch on it, you can actually reach behind the clutch and grab behind the clutch and turn it. There's actually a threaded bolt that runs through the clutch that you can actually grab it, because if you grab this section, the clutch will act as it should and it won't let the motor reverse. So, and then if you have the wire chuck over there, you can do the same. You can just grab the wire chuck and it'll turn it. So anyway, I like to have it turning at me. The reason for that is when I'm applying finish, and I'll show you here how I do it, I like to be able to look down onto the brush as everything is coming towards me. I like to lay the brush down and it's coming towards me like this, I can see. If it's going away from me, I can't put the brush underneath the rod because then it will be pushing finish away from me. And I really don't want to put finish on like this, right? And I don't really want to lay the brush on top because I want to see where the brush and the finish are contacting each other as they touch the thread. Now, another tip that I always do is I cut these brushes. Sometimes the brushes are all perfect and nice and straight. Sometimes they got some flyaways on it. I think I got a few going on tonight as well. But so I get a really nice sharp pair of scissors and I will cut it like this, trim it like that. Or what I will do is I will take a razor blade, one of our CRB razor blades, and I will lay it down on my workbench and I will cut it, and I'll show you how I do that really quick. Nick, I'm going to come out here, bud, so you can see it. I know it's a little hard to see it, but I want to show everybody at home how I do that. I'm going to do one with the razor blade, and I'll do one with... All right, so I'm going to turn it. Can we still see that? Cool. All right, so I actually will take it, and I will turn it up like this, okay? And you need to take a sharp razor blade, and I trim it back, right? Sometimes you got to do it in a couple little strokes there, and then you can see there, I got a nice little flat top, okay? Now also the brush is shorter than it was, and what that allows me to do is when I lay it against the rod blank, there is a little bit more, there's not so much give in the bristles. So I can kind of, and I think that's where the guys come in with a spatula and really like it, because they can really lay a hard edge there with that spatula because it doesn't give at all, and it kind of just creates maybe a dam, if you will, and does that. So anyway, let me get the finish here. So we got some of those bubbles working out. Now you can kind of do a little hot breath there, depending on, you know, if you've had a lot of water that day or maybe some moonshine or something. It might clear those bubbles out a little bit better. So anyway, I'm going to lay some finish. I'll do on this red here so that we can see it really, really good at home. And sometimes you'll want to light the flame. If there's like a little bit of a tag end or something, you can kind of do one of these numbers. That is a time, though, that you can't use a heat gun to do that. So you do have to use a flame. Okay. sometimes you'll get some dust or some hair or a little bit of a fray or something. So anyway, I'm going to show you how I put finish on. Typically, if it's a big wide thread wrap like that, I will come in and I'll just kind of stack some finish on it. And I'm not super aggressive, but I do let it kind of come at me, and I kind of work it back and forth like this, right? Now what I'm going to do is, all I'm doing is I'm kind of loading that thread with some finish. And then I actually, to get a steady handhold, depending on how high your dryer is off the bench or what your setup is like, I always use my non-brush hand as an anchor. So depending on how high it is, I might turn it on a fist like this, and then I will lay the brush down like that. And since I loaded the thread up with finish, you can see the thread or the finish kind of working this way, and all I'm doing is spreading it out. So I'm doing a couple things. I'm actually forcing the finish into the thread, but I'm also manipulating that finish around as well. Nick, maybe do I need to kind of come to you a little bit more there, bud? Does that help a little? All right, cool. So now as you can see, we kind of want to work that finish over. Just kind of walk it over. You can see my hand's pretty steady, honestly, from working all day and being here. And then sometimes you can actually just press that brush and work the bristles just right off the edge. And you can kind of see there that cut a pretty sharp line. All right. Now the good thing is, you know, this looks obviously a little bit messy. That's D-size thread, so it's actually going to absorb quite a bit of finish. The good thing about rod finish is, though, once you cut that line, that sharp edge, if you take and add more finish than you should have, like this, it's typically not going to run off outside of that edge. It has kind of a water tension type barrier on it on the outside. Now, I'm showing you this too because this is how you create footballs in your finish, and you really don't want to do that, okay? So that would be way too much finish, right? And then as this cures, and you can kind of see it trying to level itself out. Now we also get people that say, you know, I just can't get my finish to be flat and level. It's probably because you have too much finish on there, and you can see right there, there's a weird like dip in it. There it is right there. There's a big hump on one side, and then there's kind of a trough on the other side. The reason that that is happening is because the finish is kind of heavy on itself, and it's trying to work itself around and level out, but that is where you create the football, and we certainly don't want that. So one of two things. I'm actually going to put that dish back under there to see if I can catch this back. So I'm going to put the burner on, and then we're just going to lightly warm that at an angle here. I'm just behind that finish. I'm not on it. It might look like I'm right on it, but I am not just dead underneath it. And you can kind of see it wanting to level out there. And then you'll create, see that sag and then it drip out? It keeps wanting to drip there. And you're watching that football disappear, right? See, it keeps dripping out. So that finish is pretty much telling you there's too much finish on this rod, man. So the weight of the finish is falling out. So you can do that. Now, as you continue to do that, you will notice if you add a little heat, you'll create a little drip under here, but the drip isn't heavy enough to fall off of the rod. So you can actually heat it up and create the drip and just touch it up from the bottom like that, and then it grabbed it. So now you have flat level finish. And of course there's a burr there, which I'm going to show you how to fix that in a little bit. But that's how to create flat level finish with pretty sharp edges there, without creating a football kind of effect.
Awesome.
So
Very cool.
those are just a few tips. Cut your brushes, do that.
Less is more.
Yeah, less is more, you know, and it kind of helps you go down the rod, and then you don't, you know, you're not using a ton of finish. You might mix up that much, but sometimes let the epoxy tell you how much needs to be on there, you know.
Yeah. A lot of times, especially if I'm doing like larger spinning guides, you know, 25, size 25, size 30.
Yeah.
Big footprint, right?
Right.
I'll do it just as you did. I'll put a lot of epoxy just on that guide foot area or a little bit off of it.
Yeah.
I'll go to the next guide. I'll do the same thing. I'll come back to the
back.
first. Yeah. I'll kind of go back and forth, back and forth. I'll go to the third guide, come back to the second guide, kind of alternate back and forth. That way, since these are self-leveling epoxies like you mentioned, you kind of want them to do their own work, so to speak.
Initially.
Yeah. And then you can come back and figure out, do I need more? Do I need a little bit less? Do I need to take some off? Kind of let the epoxy talk to you, because it will tell you right away, like you saw. If you see that football starting to form, you got too much on there.
Yeah, and if you are using, if you're going to do a stretch of epoxy that is maybe between these two sections here, and let's say there's a decal there, or there's going to be a decal there, that is a place where you don't want to load up too much finish either, because what will happen is that epoxy will try to work itself over a really long area, but there's not enough weight in that epoxy to continue, you know, to kind of level itself out. And then that's where you get guys go, man, I have waves all in my epoxy. And it's like, well, that's probably because you put too much epoxy on, and then it couldn't level itself out, and then you didn't use the heat and stuff. So also, speaking of, you know, these two sections here where you're trying to work finish across a large area, if you have this little brush and we're doing this and we're going to work, you can see I'm gonna have to peck at this for, you know, and I always use this type of a brush stroke on a wide section, right? So I'm always moving across this way when I'm doing a wide stretch there, because if I just did this, I'd be here for an hour trying to get this finish on here. So what I want to do is I want to add a little finish, and then I work across this way. Now, a lot of the times you will be doing sections like this, not in conjunction with all of the other guides.
Right.
Or if you have, you know, if you have like a dragon scale or something, you won't be doing that per se, because you'll put a couple different coats over it.
Right.
So speaking of that, I want to show you guys. I'll kind of segue here to the next deal. So that's the non-football deal. All right, so we have some dragon scale here. So when you have some dragon scale, it's one of those deals that it's a great decorative thing. It's great down in the butt section. It's great to put a decal over, something like that. But if you've got a big wide area like this, I drop this brush out, and that's when I will pick up one of the ox hairs. Now, this is another one that you can trim. You know, if you want to make a flat cut, if you want to kind of get rid of some of these wild hairs that kind of stand up and I kind of use the scissors and I lay them on their side like that, and I'll peel some bristles off and cut them. The best part about this, though, is if you're doing it, if you're doing a butt section, you are actually not going to be cutting really, really sharp lines. So you can actually come in here and work a lot of this finish down. And you can really load this brush up And you can cut very wide swatches across the top of this here. And you can see how much faster we're going to move across this. I'm still going to use these long brush strokes like this. You want to do? You want to grab bench cam?
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, there you go.
All right.
And I'm going to purposely work some bubbles into this thing so we can see it with the flame. Okay. And this ox hair brush can make some serious quick work of a long dragon scale. And yes, for those at home, I can't see your comments, but yeah, I'm sure you guys are saying that I cheated with the drywall mesh tape underneath this, but you know, that's how it is sometimes. We got to do it for the show. We got to do it live. All right, so you can see some bubbles are in there. And all we're going to do now is we're just going to flame this out like this, right? Nice and smooth. Make really, really long drags across that, and that'll have it leveled out like that. No problem at all.
Cool.
So, nice and quick. Nice and quick. But, all right, cool. What else do we have? We have a little bit of a floating decal. Is that what we got?
Yeah, could do that.
Yeah. What else we, because we don't want to fix any of the boogers yet, so I'm going to move this. So what we've got now is we have two sections, right? This has got one coat on it. This actually has two coats on it here. So this is just your dragon scale, got two coats. We got one coat on a dragon scale here. I'm actually going to take this and move this. And hopefully not going to get that on me later.
Hopefully not.
So we are now going to move to those college football fans out there. We actually chose to do
Get this out.
a little tiger wrap. And then, Jay, I can't see, bud. So we've got that there. We got a little, all of the college decals we've got at mudhole.com. You can run over there. And we've got a number of colleges, a lot of major colleges. We've got UCF in there. We got Florida, Georgia, Stanford, all kinds in there. And of course, we had to work in a tiger wrap there. You can see that kind of work its way around there, right? So the cool thing about doing the tiger wrap and a floating decal is when you have, when you've got that decal in there, this would be a really, really good instance to use a high build. And the reason that you would use that high build, oh, and here's another little pro tip. If you can't find your mixing sticks, you can use the back of the brush that you're going to use. Just make sure to wipe it off before you do that.
That's a good idea.
You want to get a couple questions while I'm doing
Yeah,
this?
why not? William, how do you clean the ox hair brushes? So William, we sell a brush cleaner that you can use to clean those brushes with. And you can use that with ox hair brushes, sable brushes.
Mm-hmm. You can honestly do it with the cheap disposable throwaways if you really want.
Could if you want to.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Now, a lot of the time when I'm mixing up finish just to put over, you know, a long decorative wrap, because I'm going to be putting finish over quickly and just over that, I actually will just mix it in the cup here, and then I won't use a foil dish. You know, I'll just be careful not to get a bunch of bubbles in it.
Yeah.
And then I will just go right from here, and I'll go right to the right to what I'm trying to cover. So, you know, Jonathan, can you make epoxy satin instead of gloss? There is is it SEMO?
Yep.
That's a matte finish.
Matte finish.
I've never really messed with it, to be honest with you.
Me either. Nope.
I guess you could also like hit it with some sandpaper.
Good. Probably not the look you desire, but
Yeah,
maybe.
that might be something that you kind of just want to. Test.
Josh has got a good question. Does the U40, probably referring to permagloss, work for a silk invisible thread wrap? Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't use permagloss with silk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's so many guys and girls out there that use that in the bamboo rod world anyway, because it is so thin and they can put so many thin coats on there. That's kind of where it was, because there were so many silk threads used in bamboo rod building. So yeah, absolutely. All right, so I've got some finish ready here, and we're going to put it over the tiger wrap. Now, what we do not want to do is, when you mix this finish up, okay, this is what I call hot finish. It's just started the chemical reaction, and this is a situation where if you have one of those rod specification decals or one of those very, very thin vinyl decals that are the clear ones that have all your rod specs on it. If you're somebody that does not want to use color preserver like this Pro Seal, I've actually been testing doing the Pro Seal over a decal, letting it dry and putting it down. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of like it. You guys know, for the last 64 episodes, you know, I'm not somebody that uses color preserver. I don't use it over threads, but I have been using it over some decals, and I actually kind of like it. So if you're going to do that, that's fine. You don't have to worry about the hot finish thing. But if you just mix up a fresh batch of finish, I would let this sit for 8 to 10, 12 minutes or so. I would literally let this sit and kind of get the chemical reaction moving, get it done. Not done, but, you know, let the epoxy settle before I would come at this decal. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to work across the top, and then when I get to the decal, first what I need to do is turn this the way I want it. And I'm actually going to just kind of lay some epoxy over the top of this decal. And I'm not really going to rub or force on this decal too much, because I've got plenty of epoxy. Because what can also happen is there's hard edges on those decals, and you can actually cause it to create bubbles in this finish if you're really, really, you know, working hard over the top of that decal. So you don't want to do that. Of course, I'm going to work some finish out here. And then again, we're just going to lay it over the top of the decal. And you can already kind of see the depth starting to just kind of massage that epoxy around a little bit. So this is how you're going to create your floating decal, because what would you say, Hunter? There's probably 4 coats of epoxy over a tiger wrap already?
Yeah, at least 3.
You know, in
usually
total?
4, yeah. You definitely want to, at least I would recommend doing thin coats. Of course, you could come in with high build and cut that down if you wanted to. But
Yep.
I think to really achieve that floating decal look, if you have multiple thin coats,
Yep.
it looks a lot better.
You can see there's a bubble there that started on the bottom of that decal there. You can see when it comes around here, there's a bubble there. And that is just because the epoxy's coming around that decal. Of course, I was kind of manipulating the epoxy, kind of working it around. Sometimes you can cause a bubble to get into it there. So instead of using the flame, I'm going to show you guys the heat gun deal. Get the old drip catcher here. And again, we're going to use it on the low setting. Always start on the low setting. You can see it pop that bubble just immediately. And then you can kind of work yourself in a little bit closer as it comes around. And all you're doing is helping it level out. You can see those drips kind of working there. You can stop it and watch it start to level out. That's actually doing a really nice job of leveling out. Didn't take much heat, and you can tell I was on the first setting, setting number 1. So, yep. I don't know if there's any Fighting Irish fans out there, but I couldn't get the Florida Gator colors down. What do you think?
Looks good.
Not too bad? Not too bad. Well, I'm going to show you. I've got one that I think most of y'all have seen. This is the one from the video, or the intro, I should say. This was on a bonefish rod. So there's kind of a floating decal with a fish decal in it. It kind of looks kind of cool. So kind of work that in there. Probably could use another coat of finish over it, but I was ready to take it fishing, so that next coat will have to wait. So yeah,
Cool.
There it is. That's your floating decal.
All right, let's do a few questions. We got a lot up there. Alvin, can you reuse the BCSI, the self-sealing caps? So here's the trick. Yes, you can. Problem is getting them out of
Yeah, good luck.
where the little bottles go that I had a second ago.
I'll put them over.
Oh, they're over there. They're really hard to get out of these bottles once they're in there. You can try to take a pair of like needle nose pliers maybe and pop like one little section off and pull it out, but it's kind of a pain, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I would just buy a couple extra to have on hand.
And in reality, those are probably the cheapest thing you will ever buy in rod building. So just buy some more.
Yeah, they're like $1 a piece, if that. Man.
Yeah. Other than
I,
maybe like a SSR tip top.
Yeah. Let's see.
I really don't want to like pitch this. I'm gonna try.
Our buddy Jim Harris has a question
Oh no!
from YouTube.
Jim
I'm
Harris.
assuming it's the same Jim Harris.
It's gotta be.
Why don't y'all throw me those giant half-gallon jugs of Pro Coat?
Come on, Jim.
You're asking a lot, Jim.
You're gonna have to
little
talk
too
to Hunter
much.
on that. You have to talk to Hunter on that. He don't let his jugs go that easy. You know?
No. Credit card is maxed after tonight.
Yeah, right.
No more giveaways.
right.
What else?
I need to hang on to that one because that one looks kind of cool.
Colton's got a good question about thread. Just like Colorfast and nylon, is there different metallic threads that color differently with epoxy? Colton, usually metallic threads do not change any shade of color when you apply epoxy to it. Usually they stay very true because metallic uses actually a foil on the thread itself, so that's really not going to change colors. There are other threads that we offer, like Tiger thread, VersaBlend. And even those typically stay true to color. Really the only one that's going to change is going to be your regular nylon. For the most part. There might be an exception here or there, but and of course silk is kind of like regular nylon. It's going to change colors a little bit, and even some go transparent. So
Yeah, no doubt.
all right,
What
I'm
else?
gonna do a giveaway.
Yeah, of course.
Second giveaway of the night. This is a good one. This is our PSK-3. This is the basic rod building startup supply kit. And we're going to throw in a gift card too.
Of course.
That's what it says up there.
Is that what it says? Cool. And we're going to do, since it's 2020, we'll do a $20 gift card.
Cool.
Put that in there. So, yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to be Jackson, Brazil from YouTube. Jackson, Brazil.
Hey, that's cool.
Awesome.
All
What you got going?
Woo! We're going to show how to unbooger some boogers. Awesome. All right, so that's excellent. Let me get Bob's question here real quick out of YouTube. What can you thin Pro Coat with? Again, I think most of the guys are typically using denatured alcohol. I think some of them are just using the regular, maybe 70% or so. I don't do that a lot. I don't thin it a lot. I use Pro Coat when I want that style finish, when I want that viscosity. And when I want something a little thinner or lighter, I just go to Threadmaster Light. Or if I need something heavier, I go to High Build. So that's just how I do it. So, but if I'm going to have denatured alcohol on hand for my alcohol burner, that's probably what I'm going to use. So, yep, cool. All right. So what do you want to do? You want to fix a boo-boo?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to take care of this one? You want me to do it?
Why don't you go for it?
All right.
You made it, right?
I made it. That
I know
did.
that was on purpose.
Maybe. All right. So we have. Can you get that, Nick? Let me turn it a little bit. All right. So we have two boo-boos here. We have one. You'll see where it's like a tag end that wasn't cut. This can also happen, if you get something in there, like a bug or anything like that. But this typically happens when you don't cut your tag ends enough and you just don't pay attention enough, or maybe you don't flame it before you put finish on it. This is more of a flat guide wrap. This one is a combination. So we did an extra booger here. So we added a football with the thorn. So pretty easy way to do that. You're going to take a razor blade, and you're going to lay that razor blade on its side, and you're actually just going to shave that right off. You're going to cut it, okay? You're going to do that just like that. Now, a lot of the time, you can take it, you can shave it, and I keep getting this hitting me here. I always think it's like a, did I not get the other sandpaper? So you can use a couple different sandpaper options and actually flatten this out. This is another good reason to have a power wrapper on hand, because you can take, kind of fold it over. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get way out here on the blank and kind of mess it up like that. So we're actually going to turn it. So what you can do is, you can actually, I'm doing this with a little bit heavier sandpaper than I would typically use, but I want to make sure you can see that. Because now it's like really, really scuffed up and looks white. So you can actually take some alcohol, and you can see that it will go right back to where it was, right? So you actually take, and you'll use a little bit of alcohol. There's some of that off there. I want to snatch the Christmas lights off. Get Mom real mad. All right, so I'm going to wipe wipe that off there. And then what you're going to do is, I guess probably shouldn't have thrown that finish away. But we are going to use that there. Yeah. This is still good. Yeah. So then we're actually going to take the finish, and we take this rod out and we put it back in the rod dryer. But since we're not going to do that, we're just going to apply our finish back here. And everything will be good as new. And you can do this, again, if you have lint in it, if you've got a thorn in it, if you've got anything like that. You can also, all right, I'm going to show that one more time. All right, so we got the thorn here, right? Can we see that? Maybe I need to get out of the way here since I have a blue. Is that better? Yeah? Kind of, sort of, maybe? Perfect. All right, so we're going to lay the razor blade on its side, and we're going to shave that out like this. See that? And we just cut that right out. Okay? Now you might want to do like 1 or 2 little cuts here. What you do not want to do is you do not want to get down and cut your thread, but since I made sure I had so much finish on here with a football, I'm not worried about that. And the good thing is that self-leveling finish is going to take care of this. So, pretty close, pretty close. And again, I'm just laying the razor blade on its side, and I'm cutting shaving little slivers off there. You can see them on the razor blade, okay? I'm just shaving them right off. You see there's a little tiny piece of thread in 1 or 2 of those from that thorn I had there. And then you can actually come in. Now, this finish has to be cured out. This cannot be tacky finish because you cannot sand down tacky finish. It'll kind of gum up on you. You also don't want to get after this really, really hard for an extended period of time because you'll heat this finish up and you'll make it soft. And when you make it soft, it just doesn't sand as well. I put a lot of finish on that. There was a lot of a football there. You can see it's come down quite a bit, and it's nice, it's flat there now. So you can actually just take your football and flatten it out if you've gotten out of hand with your finish. And of course, this works. There was a question about it being, kind of wavy over a long section. You can sand that down. You can do it over a guide foot if you can kind of get in there without messing up the guide foot. And of course, we're just going to use the alcohol. It's going to clean it right up. And then typically what I'll do is I'll use multiple grits of sandpaper. If I'm knocking that one down, this is, this is 120, but I will use a finer grit as I get to where I want it to be. So that's where that's at, and then, yeah. So go from there, and you're ready to rock.
Cool.
So, yeah. Well, thank you for letting me fix my screw-ups.
No problem. No problem at all.
But that, that's one of those good instances where if you wake up in the morning and you've got, epoxy sagging off because the power went out or something, yeah. Trust me, you can fix it. It's got to be really, really bad to not be able to do that. There's also, we did it last year. I didn't want to replicate it, but we did it last year. We had Nathan Powers, who's a really, really talented rod builder from out in the Panhandle, and he had built a rod for me, and then you used it, and it was one of those builds that the thread work was incredibly nice on it, and because it lived so long on the deck of a bass boat, it really just got super worn down. But it's a little tough to see, but we did it last year. You can check that out on our YouTube page. It was the Big Finish show last year. And what we did was, you can see back here, this finish has really gotten a lot of like scrape marks, and it's been beat up a lot. And out here, we actually took it and we sanded it down and we buffed it, and then we added another coat of finish back over the top of it. And you can really tell that the black is blacker, the silver pops more, the green is greener out here than it is in here. And that's really just because, you know, when rods spend a lot of time on the front deck and they rub against each other, you know, they get cuts in them from hooks, or, you know, they just get worn. You actually can breathe some new life into that finish over some of your kind of decorative work. And that way, especially if you've got a cool rod that a great friend built you that you wanted to, you know, keep fishing. I mean, this has been re-gripped, it's been fixed, it's been buffed, polished, and finally, you know, we just said it deserves its own place in the penthouse, so we just went ahead and cut it off so we could constantly show this off on the show when we use it without knocking some of these lights down. So that was the famous MB873 from Nathan Powers. That was a cool one for sure.
A lot of days on the water, a lot of tournaments, a lot of
money won.
A lot of money won.
That's a good one. That was a good one.
It's been around the block a couple times.
I'm glad he built that one for us. That's part of the cool thing about rod building. You should get to make some really cool friends when you're in the craft. Yep. So yeah, that's it.
All right, I think it's time to do a little rapid fire Q&A.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
So we got quite a few questions up here. So
Perfect.
all right,
Hit it.
let's do it. I'll do Ron's question first. When will the heater be back in stock, Ron? That's going to be a couple weeks out, probably around the week of Christmas.
TJ Saunders, if building a trolling and a downrigger rod, is it best to use high build Pro Coat on the guide wraps, or is the normal medium build okay for that? TJ, you can go either direction. Neither one of those is wrong. A lot of people use high build. You're just going to be able to do it in less coats. I personally, I guess, like to make it hard on myself. I tend to use the regular Pro Coat, and I just get a smoother, cleaner finish when I do multiple coats of either light build or medium build. So
Yep.
that's that, TJ.
Whoa, and there goes all the questions.
Let's see. Richard, at what point do you stop using heat on the finish? Richard, I am going to use heat to level that epoxy out, let that epoxy talk to you, let it drip off. It'll tell you when it's kind of ready and it's level. And also, if there's bubbles in it, I'm still going to use a little bit of heat, and that heat will continue to pull those bubbles out. I will use a little bit and then stop. And then I might come back and, oh, there's one more bubble, boop, hit it, and be done with it. So that's when I stop using heat on it.
Cool. Dean, color preserver over decals, how long till epoxy? I know a lot of guys do use color preserver on decals. Certainly something you can do.
Yep.
I personally do not. We've shown that, I believe, 2 or 3 shows ago. We did decals and showed some in-depth and some tips on how to apply decals. So again, personally, I don't use color preserver, but you can. And how long till epoxy? Usually you want to wait probably at least a couple hours on color preserver.
Yeah.
At least an hour.
I've been playing with it. I cannot say for certain, but I have been using a hair dryer or a heat gun, and I've got it down, you know, like 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
You know, where I'm like not getting super aggressive, but so far I feel like I've been getting good results with it. I wouldn't say to do that on like a customer's rod that you can't go back on.
Yeah.
But I have been playing with it, and I got it down in a pretty short time. So.
Yep.
Cat Kings, what is a good rule of thumb for time in between coats? You know, the good thing is you want that finish dry, And I am somebody that will do the next coat on the typical Pro Coat or the Threadmaster Light. I'm going to usually put a coat on at night, wake up in the morning. If I need another coat, I'll put that coat on then.
Yep.
Now, the good thing about it is if you put the coat on and you go fish it, you can fish it 2 months. And then if you're like, man, that really needs another coat, you can come back, clean the rod really, really well with the alcohol and stuff, and you can still add another coat and it'll be just fine.
Yeah. Maybe use a little sandpaper.
Yeah. Especially
those.
if you have a little spot or two, you might want to kind of give it a little rough up and then go, but you don't have to do the whole rod that way. So, yep.
Michael Moore, what is your favorite MHX blank to use for a drop shot? Both of us. So I'm gonna go with the SB812 Extra Fast.
Ooh, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I am actually going to go with an NSJ 871. NSJ, that's right? Yeah, NSJ 871. So it's a little bit longer. Most people are like, no, it's got to be 6'9" or 6'10" to be a drop shot rod. Nope. So I'm using the 871 to drop shot, and I'm using the 872 to throw a shaky head on it.
Awesome. Cool. Great. Those are both excellent spinning rods to have.
I know. What else? Let's hit Tyler. What's the best grit sandpaper when using sanding down the epoxy? This was 120. I would not go any grittier than this. Don't go to 80, don't use 60, don't use 40, nothing like that. Do 120, and then I come back and probably use, I think, is it 320?
Sounds right.
3
Sure.
something?
Sure.
The extra fine or the very fine that we have here in the building, I think is 320. That has seemed to do excellent. It's also the same steps I use when I do my cork grips. So I do about, I use the 120 and then I go to that. Sometimes I get some steel wool out if I want some velvety finish. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, last but not least, Matthew Klein, building a small diameter blank ultralight trout rod. Which reel seat, what diameter reel seat would you use? Matthew, I would just go with a size 16 barrel seat, or maybe even like a VSS M.
I'm doing the VSS.
I know you love the VSS M, and so do I. But 16 is typically going to be your smallest diameter reel seat.
Yep.
So.
Yep, absolutely. Very cool. All right, well, that's it. That is the last rapid fire of the last show of 2020, episode 65. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to close it out here, but as we're doing that, I am going to call the whole team out of the war room. We're going to do kind of a little SNL send-off. I don't think anybody's ever seen the whole team. So we made sure that they were dressed for their best, but as they're making their way up here to the penthouse and going through the proper channels and turning the keys at the same time and all that stuff to get up on the elevator, we are going to talk about the show. Don't forget the Build to Win hashtag in the themed photo contest. That's in the Rod Builders Workshop on Facebook. You should already be in there. If you're not, you're missing out on like sneak peeks of products. You're also not getting the discount codes as quick as everybody else is. You're not getting any of that stuff, So you really, really need to be in that Rod Builders Workshop. And don't forget, submit that photo by December 15th.
Yep.
Now, you also need to give something away again.
Yep. So our grand prize winner. This is a big prize. So you get your choice of a multi-option rod kit, plus one of our new RBS-K2 kits, which is going to have the base tracks, it's going to have some rod stands, it's going to have a TC2 thread carriage. What else is in there? A rod dryer with a wire chuck, and I believe that's it.
And a multi-option rod kit is going to come in there.
Yeah. Winner is Jacob Fritz from Facebook.
That's the big one. That one right there is certainly going to make your 2020, for sure. So we had David we had David Klein with the finishing kit, the CRB finishing kit with epoxy mixer as the first one. And then we had Jackson Brazil coming out of YouTube with a basic rod building startup supply kit. And I think we gave him a gift card in there too, didn't we?
Yep.
All right, and he also got a $20 gift card. So without further ado, let's bring the team in here. We're going to say goodbye to everyone for 2020. Let's go ahead. Nikki Mintz, get up here. We've got the Zoom man, camera 2, 3, and 4 operator, Nikki Mintz here. Taylor Belanger, get up here. This is Taylor Bellinger. He's in the war room. He's answering questions. He's putting stuff up. He's trying to embarrass us on screen. We got Guff. So this is Guff Blogman. So this is the creative writer. You see him do all the cool words and everything like that. And kind of pinch in here. Hoffman, let's get in here, bud. So this is the guy that does all of the cool, creative stuff. We're talking catalog covers. This guy was Santa Claus holding up a sailfish in the last episode. And I'm telling you, 105 degrees in South Florida, holding a sailfish in a Santa outfit. Telling you, he gets an extra 2% this year, no doubt. Our fearless leader of the whole marketing team is going to be Stephen Sweeney here. So he is new to the team, and we are certainly glad to have him. He can make a small basketball shot from way downtown right now. So that's it. And we've got the guy on the 1s and 2s. Jay is the drone guy, the camera guy. He's a video producer. He's doing all of the really cool stuff with the video and the editing and keeping our makeup looking right and tight with Nikki Mintz. They're the guys on the 1s and 2s, and of course you saw those coming out of the war room. So this is the team. We call it the Thunderdome, and here we are in the penthouse. So as always, my left-hand man, Hunter McCamey, wish everybody happy holidays. Thank you for sticking around with us all of 2020. We wish everybody a much better 2021. So thanks for sticking around for the show, episode 65, and that's the Big Finish Show 2.0. That's right. All right, guys.
See you next year.
See ya.
Take care. All right, close us out before we say something we shouldn't. Thank you guys very much. We'll see y'all on the flip side.